Good morning, everyone. Welcome back. I hope that you had a fantastic long weekend. I'm sorry that I can't be with you there this morning. You have a couple of written response assignments or written response questions that need to be worked on in class today. They are due Thursday. The purpose of this short video is to go through what some of my expectations are with regards to these types of assignments. The first thing to note is that when I say an assignment is due on a particular day, I'm expecting it to be turned in at the beginning of class on that day. So at the beginning of Thursday's class, I'm going to ask for these two assignments to be turned in. A reminder here that being absent from school is not an excuse to bypass any responsibilities that you have. So if these are due at the beginning of Thursday's class, and for some reason you know you're not going to be in school or you're unable to make it to school, my expectation is that you would take pictures on your phone of your work and email them to me. One final kind of clerical item before we get to the specifics of these questions. When you are given these written response questions, I would like you to do your responses on the sheets of paper that the questions are on. I don't want you completing them on separate sheets of paper and stapling it all together. So now let's take a look at the questions. I'm not going to talk specifically too much about either of these questions, although I will use one to illustrate a couple of points. But if you look at the bottom of either of these questions, you will always see on my written response assignments this template, this kind of paragraph or two in bold telling you what's expected. And it says, first of all, your responses need to be complete and clear. They need to be complete because you're not going to get full marks unless you do all of the work. They need to be clear, and clear in this context means easy to follow and organized. So you don't want to submit a response where you have all kinds of different things going on paper with arrows pointing from one thing to another thing. They need to be presented in a really concise, clear, organized fashion. With that being said, if it has to be something that is easy for me to follow, and I want you to put your responses on that piece of paper, please don't try to fit everything on the front side of that sheet of paper. In most written response questions, a lot of the first page, in fact, sometimes most of the first page is taken up with information, which doesn't leave you a lot of room on the first page. Start your response on the first page and continue it on the back side of that. Now let's talk about the next sentence, which talks about equations and showing work. It says, all work, including equations from the formula sheet, derivations of equations not on the formula sheet, substitution with units, and answers with correct sig digs must be shown. I want to highlight to you that this sentence talks about two different types of equations. Those equations that you pull off of your formula sheet and those equations that are not on the formula sheet. So I'm going to talk about the part highlighted in yellow right now, equations from the formula sheet. So let's take a look at the first example here, which is one of your written response problems. It has a car with a particular mass moving at a certain speed. It's moving north. It collides with another car moving south at a particular speed on the same road. Immediately after the collision, you're told the velocity of one of the cars, and you're given some other information. But one of the tasks in this problem is to show that the collision was not elastic. And in order for you to show that a collision is not elastic, you're going to have to make use of kinetic energy calculations. So you're going to have to do calculations from the formula EK equals 1/2 mv squared. Now if you take a look at what I've highlighted in yellow, EK equals 1/2 mv squared is a formula from your formula sheet. So what am I telling you in this sentence? You need to write down that formula from your formula sheet, and then you also need to show the substitution with the units, and then you need to show your answer with the correct number of significant digits and also the correct units. So anytime you make use of a formula from the formula sheet, you need to show those three things. You need to show the formula, your proper substitution, and then your correct answer. Now let's talk about what about if you use equations that are not on the formula sheet? What's highlighted in blue? Well, when you take a look at this question, the very first thing that you're asked to do is determine the speed and direction of the full-size car after the collision. Now, if you go back and look at the question said during the collision no outside forces are present, which means that you can use the law of conservation of momentum because the system is isolated. So if you look at what I've highlighted in kind of bluish green, it says equations not on the formula sheet need to have derivations shown. So you cannot, when you answer this first part of this question, you cannot just dive right in and write mv plus mv equals mv plus mv, although that's what you're going to have to do to answer the question. mv plus mv equals mv plus mv is not a formula on your formula sheet. So you need to show the derivation of that formula or of that equation. And the derivation comes from the fact that there's a physics principle used. So now I'm going to talk about this last part. Correct and appropriate physics principles must be stated and explained for full marks. Stated means in words. So when you put together what I'm telling you in the first sentence that's highlighted in blue, that you need to show derivations of equations not on the formula sheet, you put that idea together with what is underlined in blue in the second part of this page, you don't just write mv plus mv equals mv plus mv. What you are going to do to answer this first question is write out in words something to the effect of, since there were no outside forces present, momentum was conserved, and then you can write pi equals pf. And then you can write mv plus mv equals mv plus mv. But you also need to explain or show how you got mv. And you got P equals mv from your formula sheet. So P equals mv is a formula from your formula sheet that needs to be included in your response as well. So what I'm telling you in general with this first paragraph, that long sentence needs to be maybe paraphrased for you to say, you need to explain where you get equations from that do not come from the formula sheet, but you do not need to explain equations that do come from the formula sheet. However, regardless of the equation you use, you have to use substitution with the correct units. You have to show your answers with correct numbers of significant digits and correct units. I hope that's helpful. I just don't want you to think that all I'm interested in here is your answers. One final thing, all written response questions are marked out of 5. So good luck with those 2 questions. I hope that you have a wonderful rest of the day, a great evening, and we will see everybody tomorrow morning. Take it easy.